Hey guys, how's it going? Yankee Dewey here. Welcome to the channel. Alright guys, so today we're going to talk a little bit about this right here, my 1984 Mustang GT350. And we're going to find out what it's like to drive a GT350 from 1984. Alright guys, so now in case if you have forgotten, since I made a video on this quite a few months ago, and I haven't really talked much about it. Now these 84 GT350s are a pretty rare car. They're not as rare as the 4-cylinder turbo SVO Mustangs of the same year, but they are still nonetheless pretty rare. A little over 5,000 of these GT350s were produced in the spring of 1984, and in this particular configuration that we have here, with the 5-liter V8 with the Tremec T5 transmission and the convertible top, along with such other things as AC delete, premium sound delete, etc., etc. This car actually, in terms of its spec, is actually really rare. Probably maybe 100, maybe less cars actually spec'd out with all those things that I just mentioned. All right, so some of you may ask, well, why compare the two? One's a Fox body, one's the current generation S550 platform. It seems a bit of a stretch, and you probably would be right. However, we can do the comparison because officially these cars do both bear the name GT350. So for this comparison, I'll be basing off of two things. Number one, the very fact that I have driven a GT350 before in the past, and number two, I currently of course own a 2016 Mustang GT. So just in case you didn't know, as a bit of a refresher, the current GT350 puts out 526 horsepower from a naturally aspirated flat plane crank V8. And they use things such as variable valve timing, as well as direct injection, as well as some other things to really get a great output from this engine. And then of course it's mated to the Tremec 6-speed transmission. In short, this Mustang is meant to be the most heavily track-focused Mustang Ford has ever put out. Alright, so what are the specifications for this 84 GT350, and really what was the purpose of Ford building this car? So for the 1984 GT350, Ford didn't do anything fancy with the engine. They simply just gave it the 5-liter V8 that you could get in any GT at that time. And the numbers actually were pretty impressive for its time. 175 horsepower and 250 foot-pounds of torque. And that engine is mated to a Tremec T5 transmission. For the current GT350, car and driver has the 0 to 60 time officially pegged at 4.3 seconds. Whereas I found an official source that says the 84 GT350 was capable of 0 to 60 in 7.1 seconds. Now, where Ford has created the current generation GT350 to be the ultimate track day Mustang, the 1984 GT350 was not created with that purpose in mind. In fact, this car was simply created just to be a commemorative car, commemorating the 20th anniversary of Mustang. But don't think that Ford skipped out on all the performance goodies. No, this car came optioned out automatically with every performance option that was available for the Mustang at the time. Things like, of course, the upgraded suspension, the Michelin TRX tire package, a functional air dam, amongst many other things. So pricing for the latest generation GT350 is going to get you right around about 60 grand, and maybe even 70 depending on if you get the R version, any sort of dealer markups. Now, a fully loaded GT350 in 1984 would have ran about $15,000, maybe 15 and some change. Now, adjusted for inflation, today that would be about $36,000. Now, I will be the first to admit, I'm not the biggest fan of convertibles in general, but this one here, I actually really like, and I'm going to show you why. So first things first, it's just a rag top, okay, obviously, but what I really like about this is the fact that if you don't want the top completely down because, let's say, the sun is too intense, of course, we have to leave the windows down, which is perfectly fine. But one thing I really do love is the fact that I can open up this rear window back here. It's just literally just a zipper. You just unzip it, fold it down, and you have an amazing cross breeze, which just makes things so much more livable. And obviously too, the top is 100% electric. It's full power electric, so there is absolutely no taking it down manually. It's very, very easy, just like any other convertible. You just take the straps or the latches that are on either side, you take them out, and you simply just press a button and it folds down on its own. Stepping inside the 84 GT350, even a current generation GT350 owner would feel right at home with inside this cockpit. Tachometer and speedo are centrally placed right in front of the driver, just as they are in a current generation Mustang. Now, as far as the tachometer read is concerned, of course, we all know the current generation GT350 redlines over 8,000 RPM, which is certainly impressive. However, this one here, because of its pushrod style V8, of course, only redlines to about 6,000. Now, moving over to the speedometer cluster real quick, you see the car has a registered printed top speed of 85 miles per hour. Of course, this car is capable of easily burying that needle past 85. The reason it's there is because it was federal law at that time that cars had to be limited, at least on the printed readout portion of the speedo, to 85 miles per hour. Of course, we know the current generation GT350 has a readout topped at 200 miles per hour. And then everything else in the car pretty much falls into place and is where you would expect it to be. Obviously, the e-brake there right next to you on the right. You have the shifter right in the spot where you, of course, want it. You have a driver information center, which is not displayed in the center of the gauge cluster like in the current Mustangs, but it's just kind of tossed down there toward the bottom. It's very primitive. It basically is just a bunch of little LED lights that just go on and off, telling you certain things. And then last but not least, although they look very, very different from current generation Recaro seats, these Recaro seats are, of course, a staple of GT350s, and they are really, really nice. They are fully adjustable in pretty much every way. They have thigh bolster adjustability support, leg adjustability support. They're really, really nice. So with all those differences in mind, I think the real test, the real differentiator between this 84 GT350 and the current one is, of course, how they drive. And I'm going to tell you right now, spoiler alert, it's totally, totally different. Let's jump in and find out what I'm talking about. Alright guys, so first things first, these Recaro seats that I'm sitting in right now, they are, as I said before in my last video I did with this, or my introduction video, I said that these were really, really great seats, and they actually really are, you know, for the time period especially, for the capabilities, you know, the performance capabilities of this Mustang. I don't really see any issue with these seats. I absolutely love them. They're very, very comfortable, and they're also quite adjustable as well. All right, so let's go ahead, let's start her up and see how we do. All right, there we go. Now that there, I don't know if you can hear that or not. Now, what, of course, the big difference is, of course, as I said before, we do not have a flat plane crank V8 in this car. We just have an old school push rod V8, which is fine, nothing wrong with that. But especially with this stock exhaust, it really leaves a lot to be desired in terms of this car's exhaust note. You know, Ford, for whatever reason or another, wanted to go with a more European style looking exhaust, and I'm not a big fan of it, although I have kind of come around to it a little bit more. But still, I really wish that they would have just put a proper dual exhaust on this car. With these particular Fox body Mustangs, however, you do need to actually buy a conversion kit, which kind of sucks. But anyways, that's enough about the exhaust. Let's go ahead and let's get some driving impressions. The clutch on this car is really rather tricky, and in fact I learned to drive stick on a Fox body Mustang, which is not it's not the best car to learn stick on. There's just, the clutch is not heavy, but it's not light either. It's actually a pretty decent feeling clutch. The only thing that I will say about it is the engagement point is kind of awkward. It's kind of hard at first to find it. It's a little bit finicky, but overall it's not bad. And then of course the second thing is going to be this shifter, and I have to say that I absolutely love it. I absolutely love this Hurst short throw shifter. It just makes the whole thing, the whole experience, worth it in every way. That was actually my biggest gripe about this car, was the shifter. It was horrible. The stock shifter, there's just no way you could keep it in the car. The throws were like reaching into like the next century, and I'm not exaggerating with those throws. It seemed that long to me anyway. It was terrible. I also like the addition of the white cue ball I put on. I just think it just ties it all together really, really nicely. The numbers for this thing, 5-liter V8, of course, you all know, puts out 175 horsepower. Now, by today's standards, that is absolutely laughable. That is not even in the realm of, like, you know, it shouldn't be. It just shouldn't happen that way. But I will say this, for being down on power at only 175, I will say this, that 250 foot-pounds of torque, which of course it derives that torque from its pushrod V8. Pushrod V8s typically are better at torque, you know, low-end torque. That in and of itself really saves the driving experience, that torque. It's really, really nice, and it comes on really rather, you know, predictably, again, as a V8 pushrod would. Going back to the shifter real quick, I absolutely, again, want to sing praises about the shifter. One thing I do love about it too is that I can actually feel the gears kind of just whirling around down there in the Tremec transmission. It just feels really, really nice. It's not a dead, muted feel. Themselves are nice and engaging. They're very positive. It feels like you're actually, you know, putting it in gear, you know what I'm saying? The throttle response actually is very, very good on this car. This car is actually, you know, capable of actually putting you in your seat, you know? It really, really is. Brakes, however, not so good, as we're kind of trying to come to a stop here. Yeah, I don't really know. I mean, the bad brakes could just be, you know, something as simple as they just need to be looked at a bit more thoroughly. Probably really do need to change out that brake fluid. Unlike the SVO, this car does have rear drums in the back, so, you know, that's not particularly too good. So let's talk about the steering a little bit. Well, of course, you know, the current GT350 is meant to be an absolute track day monster. It's meant to get out there on the track and just run with the best of them. So overall handling, steering, and that, it's pretty good. I will say, as far as the steering is concerned, it's not the best. In fact, I thought there would be more feel. It's not very heavy, but it's not light either. I actually like the way this is weighted. It feels natural, but I don't know, there just isn't enough information coming through the wheel for me. There just isn't. I don't know why. It kind of feels like it's so close, but yet it's so far. And as far as the suspension goes, I would say it's actually pretty damn good, considering that this is the original suspension. We've done absolutely nothing to the suspension. We're still riding on the stock coils, the stock shocks, all the stock bushings. So the handling is definitely adequate, but that's probably about it. Just adequate. It handles about as good as a current day, you know, take your pick, any sort of economy car nowadays. So this is about as good a handling as, you know, the Mustang got back in 1984. And yeah, you know, it's not particularly confidence inspiring. Certainly for back roads, like, you know, kind of what I'm on right now, it's certainly adequate. You know, there's little body roll. If you don't push it, I mean, like, really push it. So again, for its time, this was the best handling a Mustang could get. The GT350, currently, for its time, it's the best handling Mustang. Now, of course, I think it's pretty obvious to say there really isn't any sort of mode selection or anything like that in this car when it comes to your steering, when it comes to your exhaust note, or anything like that. It's all just basic. It's just, it is what it is. That's it. You better be happy with it, or I don't know what to tell you. But I will say this, unlike the current GT350, I think one of the bigger differences too is that this was never really truly meant to be a track day car. These early Fox body Mustangs were really good at one thing, and that was 0 to 60. The quarter mile, you know, the light to light, you know, street block to street block kind of racing. Trans Ams and Camaros of this time were much better at actually, you know, cornering and actual things like performance. But when it came to just out and out speed, these cars, these Mustangs really were the fastest of the bunch. Really, these cars were the fastest right up until, I would say, well, about 1984, when the C4 Corvette came along. A little chirp from the tires. Really quite hot today, and this car has no AC, and I'm sweating, but honestly, I don't care. It's just so much fun. It's not fast by modern day standards, but you know, when you kind of take it in all together, it's handling capabilities, the way it just feels, the seating position, the chassis feel, it's just a lot of fun. So I think it's about time I start closing out this review now, and I just want to say a couple of things here in the end. So after driving both cars, there's obviously stark differences that I didn't even really cover in the video. Things like technology and safety. Obviously, the past GT350 can never compete with the current one in those areas. But the area where I think my 84 GT350 can definitely compete with the current one is just pure fun and excitement. Sure, it's a different kind of fun. It's a different kind of experience altogether. But I really think that's what makes cars so very, very interesting. To be able to go from one full dynamic to another is fascinating to me. And it's really, really fun and fascinating to see just how cars handled back then, and really fun to see how far we've come in the pursuit of better track times, better safety, better technology, etc. The current GT350 really is a completely different animal. Just take the clutch and the shifter, for example. Yes, I felt that the Tremec 6-speed in the current GT350 was fantastic. However, I felt it was all very, very light. The throttle response was light, the braking was very good and solid, and the clutch was also light. I kind of like the setup in mine a little bit better. I like the weighted clutch feel, although I don't really like the point in which it engages all that much. You get used to it very quickly. I also like the shifter in mine just a little bit better. Again, that Tremec 6-speed in that GT350 is fantastic, but I just like mine a little bit better. It just gives a little bit more of a raw experience. Now, one thing I did mention I was disappointed about with my GT350 was the steering feel, and that there really wasn't any road feel or no information being translated through the steering. And that is true. Although it does feel not too light or not too heavy, there is no road feel, and that's a bit unfortunate. I think what really helps the current GT350 though is those Michelin Pilot Super Sport Cup tires. Those things really do translate information up through the steering column very, very well. And that's definitely something I can certainly appreciate tremendously, especially in a car that's supposed to be a driver's car. Now, both GT350s are fairly lightweight. As far as mine, well, Fox bodies were really lightweight in general. Mine, as being a convertible, it is a bit heavier, but it still comes in right at around 3,200 pounds, whereas the current GT350 comes in at around 3,700. The current GT350 feels lighter than it actually is, and I think that's due to the fact that Ford went ahead and lightened up the steering a bit. It's really not much lighter than my current 2016 GT, but my Fox body, it's light just naturally on its own. Certainly the power to weight ratios of these cars are dramatically different, absolutely, but the laws of physics are always going to be there, and it's very hard to escape those laws of physics. But certainly a generous tap from your right foot can certainly correct a lot of wrongs. So some things that I really dislike about mine. Well, I don't like the fact that it's, a convertible. I already said that in the beginning. I mean, certainly I appreciate it. When I have the top down and I'm cruising along, I feel really good. I really, really do like the feeling. But I'm usually typically a more performance-oriented driver, so having the top down and just a convertible in general, it does give some has some chassis flex to it, which I really don't appreciate. And Fox bodies in particular, they are kind of known for some chassis flex and twists and stuff like that. And of course, the car is just really down on power. I mean, certainly the torque is well appreciated, and it will put you back in your seat. Don't get me wrong.
But again, it's really not up to modern day standards. You're not really going to turn any heads unless if you have Fox body fans out there, which I know there are plenty. But most people who do turn their head, they're just going to look at it and say, oh, well, that's a nice car, that's nice. But they're not really going to understand the significance of it. They're really not going to understand that it's a rare car or anything like that. And finally, last but not least, this GT350 is not a Shelby GT350. That's right. In 1984, Carroll Shelby was not working with Ford. He was over working with Dodge. So, this is not a Shelby GT350, not like the current one, which has Shelby's name right on it. And that's why the current GT350 or any GT500 or GT350 of the past that has Shelby's name on it is just going to be worth more money and is going to be more sought after because his name is on it. This one here does not. It's just Mustang GT350. Shelby really didn't have anything to do with it, which I think really has kind of harmed the reputation of this car. Certainly, a lot of people just forgot about it because, well, Carroll Shelby's name was simply not attached to it. So anyways, that's it. I'm done with the review, guys. I really hope you appreciated it. Just kind of getting, a little bit of a retrospective here of what the 1984 GT350 was really all about and kind of how it compares to the modern day example. So please, guys, make sure if you liked what you see, go ahead and hit that like button as well as subscribe to the channel. We have much more content coming. Thank you all for watching. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next one. Take it easy, guys.